During the Song dynasty in China, Wu Shiba found himself amidst a spirited game of football with 5 teenagers in the capital city of Kaifeng. After the game, Wu Shiba was graciously invited for a drink by one of the teenagers. During their conversation, Wu Shiba shared about his profession as a hat seller. To his amazement, the teenager offered sponsorship complete with a money note authorizing him to collect a substantial sum of 10,000 yuan from a certain Guo family in the city. Wu Shiba was further extended an invitation to spend the night with the teenager at his dwelling. However, this generosity came with a stern warning, emphasizing that he must not go into certain rooms. His curiosity getting the better of him, Wu Shiba couldn't resist exploring the off-limits rooms, only to stumble upon harrowing scenes of torture and mutilation. Terrified by this gruesome discovery, he resolved to escape at daybreak. However, as dawn broke, he found himself mysteriously transported near the city gate, the room he occupied nowhere in sight. Now faced with a profound moral dilemma, Wu Shiba, swayed by the allure of wealth, chose to prioritize greed over justice. Instead of reporting the heinous scenes he witnessed, he opted to collect the money from the Guo family. Overnight, his fortunes changed dramatically as he became affluent. It was only later that he grasped the unsettling truth: the 5 seemingly ordinary teenagers were, in fact, the malevolent Wutongshen, the notorious 5-way wealth gods. In another tale, a man named Wu, formerly a sandal maker, underwent a remarkable change in fortune by becoming a prosperous vegetable oil dealer. His newfound wealth sparked suspicions among neighbors, especially when thefts occurred in the houses of local dignitaries, leading to accusations against Wu. While under torture, Wu confessed to interacting with a one-legged spirit, promising abundant rewards in exchange for specific sacrifices. Cleared of the accusations, Wu took it upon himself to revive an abandoned shrine dedicated to the one-legged spirit. Here, he conducted nightly rituals involving extravagant animal blood sacrifices, with his entire family gathering in darkness, undressed. This allowed the spirit, identified as the Wutongshen, to engage in intimacy with Wu's wife, even leading to the birth of the deity's offspring. Several years later, when Wu's eldest son married an official's daughter, the refined wife refused to partake in these rituals. Enraged by this rejection, the god unleashed a devastating pestilence upon the Wu household. Only after Wu, his wife, and the resolute daughter-in-law fell ill and perished, and their amassed wealth was lost, did the Wu family regret their practices and cease their offerings to the spirit. Traditionally, Wutongshen were believed to originate from mandrills living in the forests, mountain spirits, or elementals. Rising to prominence in southern China during the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907, they were able to exert control over beasts and malevolent spirits in the mountains because of their supernatural abilities, leading devotees to offer protection fees for their safety. These entities were often portrayed as one-legged demons, a result of an incident where Wan, a demon slayer, cut off one of the legs when he forcibly imposes himself on women, raping one and demanding the other in marriage in exchange for 100 taels of silver. This was recorded in the famous classic, Liaozhai Zi, Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, chapter 408. However, because of their lustful nature, they are adept at disguising themselves as attractive gentlemen to seduce unsuspecting women. They eventually become notorious as gods of sudden and unearned wealth by granting money to husbands in exchange for engaging in sexual relations with their wives. Women who were ravished or possessed by these creatures reportedly lost consciousness and endured prolonged fits and convulsions, lasting for days or even weeks, pushing them to the brink of death. Survivors of such encounters were believed to gain supernatural powers, transforming into shamans in the service of these spirits. Notoriously temperamental, these entities could swiftly reclaim the wealth they had bestowed at the slightest offense. Among the more questionable practices is the tradition of borrowing money from Wutongshen, particularly from the temple at Shangfangshan in Suzhou. These borrowed funds are intended for business ventures, with the belief that Wutongshen will assist the borrower in acquiring wealth. However, there's a significant catch. Operating like an illicit loan shark, those who borrow are expected to repay at least double, and in some cases, up to tenfold of the borrowed sum, depending on the agreement made with the deities. Securing a loan from Wutongshen involves the intermediary role of a female shaman. The shaman initiates a prayer to allow Wutongshen to possess her, and individuals seeking a loan must prepare various paper ingots or paper money as offerings. Once possessed, the shaman, acting on behalf of Wutongshen, negotiates the borrowing terms. The conditions must be agreed upon before believers can take 4 paper ingots from the table, to be offered at home. If the paper ingots retained its original form after a few days, it signifies Wutongshen's agreement to lend money. If the paper had shriveled, the request was denied. However, the borrower doesn't receive physical currency, rather, it's akin to Wutongshen issuing a check, the fulfillment of which is uncertain. Borrowers must pray to Wutongshen on the 1st and 15th day of each month, as well as the 5th day of the first lunar month, accompanied by offerings like burning incense and paper money. At the year's end, borrowers must return to the temple where the loan was acquired to repay the debt and fulfill the negotiated conditions. This involves offering prayers, returning the arrears in the form of principal and interest to Wutongshen. Many individuals fail to fulfill this obligation, as the nature of the loan makes repayment challenging. Failure to pay is often followed by various mishaps, ranging from personal illness to afflictions on one's descendants. It's also believed that if the debt is not paid off, descendants will be burdened with continuing payments, perpetuating the debt with Wutongshen through generations. This led to the popular proverb in Suzhou, "A loan from the other world contracted at Shangfangshan, you can never return it completely." If Wutongshen is considered evil, should efforts not be made to eliminate their worship? Indeed, various attempts have been undertaken to suppress them. In 1445, during the Ming dynasty, Li Congji, a new Suzhou prefect, ordered the destruction of temples dedicated to Wutongshen. Tragically, Li Congji fell seriously ill and died shortly thereafter, leading people to believe that his actions had offended Wutongshen, resulting in his demise. In 1685, during the reign of Qing Emperor Kangxi, Governor Tang Bin, 1627–1687, received a complaint from a father whose daughter had fallen victim to Wutongshen. Despite numerous offerings, the daughter tragically lost her life. Tang Bin personally led the removal of statues from the temple on Shangfangshan, beating each of them 40 times with boards before setting them ablaze. The temple was then dedicated to another Taoist god, Guandi. Tang Bin extended the ban on Wutongshen beliefs across the entire province, aiming to reform local customs and practices. Several years later, with Tang Bin's passing, Wutongshen beliefs resurged, and the temple on Shangfangshan reverted to its worship of Wutongshen. Attempts were made again in 1732, launched by another Governor-General of Jiangsu, Yin Jishan, 1695–1771, in 1835 with the Mongolian governor of Jiangnan, Yuqian, 1793–1841, and in 1928 when the Wu County governor destroyed the images of the deities. The crackdown on Wutongshen has been made more difficult due to identity confusion and the morphing of its image over time to prevent suppression. For example, the imperial court conferred a title, Marquis of Wutong, later replaced by the more familiar Wuxian. Though some people claimed Wuxian to be a benevolent god and a separate deity from Wutongshen, these two gods had become interchangeable in the minds of the public. Others claim that Wuxian is just Wutongshen repackaged in a better light. The city of Shizhou boasted a grand and magnificent Wuxian temple. One day, an official and his concubine visited the temple for worship. To their horror, the concubine mysteriously fell ill, and despite attempts to seek medical help, she succumbed to an unexplainable death. Upon hearing of the bizarre circumstances surrounding the concubine's demise, someone suggested seeking the assistance of a Taoist priest named Chao. The Taoist priest arrived, inspected the situation, and regretfully informed the official that it was too late to bring the deceased back to life. Nevertheless, he offered to uncover the mystery behind the strange incident. Chao drew a talisman and burned it near the deceased's coffin. Suddenly, the lifeless body sat up, terrifying everyone present. Chao explained that the dead had been possessed by evil spirits and demanded to know the identity of the possessing spirit. The possessing spirit eventually confessed that it was Wutongshen masquerading as Wuxian. When Chao wanted him to release the soul of the deceased, the spirit not only refused but also mocked him. In response, Chao sealed the corpse back into the coffin, placed it on the altar, and appealed to the higher gods for assistance. A god, Marshal Wen Qiong, arrived with thunder and lightning. Armed with a golden hammer and a fierce countenance, Marshal Wen severed the head of the statue, causing the statue to bleed. Unfortunately, though the local veneration of this evil god ceased temporarily, other places continue to worship him. As part of the effort to reshape the negative perception of Wutongshen, various scrolls, such as the treasure scrolls of the 5 sages, were disseminated among the people. In this narrative, the 5 sages are revealed to be incarnations of Bodhisattva Huaguang. Born into the Shao family in Wuyuan County of Huizhou Prefecture, these saints have an earthly father, but their mother is the transformed sage mother of Jiezidu, who descended to earth and assumed the identity of the landlord's wife. The name, Spider, in her title alludes to her demonic nature. The 5 saints came into existence as a ball of flesh after 24 lunar months in their mother's womb, and due to the perception of them being demonic, they were cast into a ditch. Their rescue came at the hands of the Bodhisattva Fire King, who returned them to the Shao family. Displaying exceptional martial arts skills from childhood, honed through teachings from a celestial immortal, their peaceful lives were disrupted when their mother disappeared, imprisoned in hell for her involvement in cannibalism. The 5 saints, with the assistance of Bodhisattva Guanyin, embarked on a mission to rescue her. The narrative reaches its climax as Guanyin, supported by the 5 saints and their mother, subdues water demons. Eventually, Guanyin permits the 5 saints and their mother to be revered as deities by the local populace on Lingxi Mountain, renamed Shangfangshan. That is why, at Shangfangshan, in addition to Wutongshen, there were also female deities that played a significant role in the cult, namely the spouses of the Wutong and their mother, the Grand Dowager, also known as the Great Mother. One can observe that the narrative in the scroll doesn't seek to conceal the demonic origins and violent tendencies of the Wutongshen but asserts that they have been redeemed through their filial piety. It is also maintained that they are kept in check by their mother and by Guanyin. The mechanism for controlling these gods is situated at Shangfangshan, where the 5 brothers and their mother have been granted a proper temple but are under the direct supervision of the Bodhisattva Guanyin. The transformed Wutongshen has also found its way into the contemporary pantheon of wealth deities, commonly represented by Marshal Zhao Gongming and his 4 assistants, Qin Jiugong, the god of attracting wealth, Shao Sheng, the god of collecting treasures, Chao Bao, the god of collecting valuables, and Yao Shaoxi, the god of profitability. Zhao Gongming was supposed to have lived during the late Warring States period, where he cultivated and attained the highest state of spiritual enlightenment, later given the title of Zhengyi Xiantan Marshal. He was said to have the ability to control thunder and lightning, ward off plagues and disasters, and generate wealth and treasure. He and his 4 disciples are also known as the 5-way wealth gods, the same name given to Wutongshen. It seems that Wutongshen is ultimately the manifestation of the minds of those who continue to seek wealth, often willing to sacrifice everything else in the process. Since Wutongshen represents their deepest desires, they continue to persist as deities for these people.